Welcome to Community Capital, a podcast about visionary founders and dedicated community builders who are shaping the future one connection at a time. I'm your host, Dara, head of founder community at Republic. Today, I'm speaking with Dara, the founder of Delphi. Delphi is an AI platform that clones individuals from today and from history to preserve knowledge. Dara is an exited founder who recently raised from incredible VCs like Founders Fund and Lux Capital. So today we're going to be talking about what his prior experience as a founder kind of informed him on his current founder journey, his fundraising tips, and also some of his hot takes regarding events and community building. Hi, Dara. Thank you so much for joining us on the Community Capital podcast brought to you by Republic. Also, congrats on the fact that you just closed your round, or announced it rather, a week ago. It's incredible what you're building. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I think just to kind of dive immediately into the conversation, you're incredibly accomplished. You've exited a company. You founded this one that you just funded. Did you know what you wanted to do early on in life, or how did you come about being a founder?
I think I always wanted to be an entrepreneur because my dad and his dad before him were both entrepreneurs. So just, you want to be like your parents sometimes. Mm-hmm. I started reading comic books at a very early age, and I was obsessed with Tony Stark and Jarvis. I literally made my whole education around how can I be like Tony Stark. He studied physics in college, so I studied physics in college. And I took a seminar in AI my freshman year of college, which I was like, hey, this could actually teach me how to make something like Jarvis. So started to get more into AI, and that's kind of what led me to the path I'm on now.
That's so funny that you bring that up, because when I found out that I needed glasses, I chose these because these are the Tony Stark glasses in Avengers 2 and Spider-Man 2. So very funny that you bring that up.
I have those same glasses for the same reason.
Oh, really? Okay, so we have so much in common already. We love to hear it. And then I guess kind of that's like a great, jumping off point in terms of like being inspired by someone who has like done so much, in this fictional world. And I would say that everything you're doing now is very much in line with, I think, what Tony Stark had built. And so when it came to like your first company and then now your second company, what was the moment, or the set of moments that led you to the point of knowing you were going to pursue this? And I guess I would love to hear it for the company that you exited and then also for Delphi as well.
Yeah, both had very different approaches to building the company. I think there are two frameworks for startups. There's like the lean startup / YC, where you just like talk to customers and iterate and build fast and break things and then eventually find something. That was definitely Friday. And then there is build by Tony Fidel / like Founders Fund / Lux Capital. They invest in founders with a vision who actually have like a plan to do something rather than just listening to customers. So with Friday, I had left my job because GPT-3 just came out, and I was like, there's so many opportunities here. I should just start building. And one day I was so frustrated with the order experience on Uber Eats on my phone that I was like, oh, it'd be great if I could just like text a phone number and get what I wanted immediately. So built Friday, posted it on Twitter. It went viral. And to me, that was like, oh, it went viral means I should probably build this company. Bad mindset at the time, but I was young, figuring things out, built out the company, and Friday got acquired. For Delphi, the idea has kind of been following me for years, and I never really had a mentor growing up. Part of immigrant mentality is like you have to figure things out on your own. So always wanted to access all of these great minds. And then when I was working on Friday, I was reading a book about my grandpa, who was an entrepreneur in Iran before the revolution. And I was reading the book, and I was like, wow, it'd be great if I could, talk to him and ask him for his advice and apply his wisdom to my life. And so I created a clone of him using his book and treated it as my own personal mentor as I was building out that startup. Crazy experience, came to Open Store, got to learn directly from Keith Raboy as like a mentor, and became really interested in this idea of like letting people scale themselves. So with Delphi, I actually had like this vision and experience with the problem, where Friday it was a lot more iterative and scrappy, and I much prefer the latter. It's way more exciting to build something that you're excited about and you have like a deep passion for.
Yeah, and then I guess kind of shifting to like the first things that you do when you found a company. I think so many people hear about like the way that the idea came to them, and I've met so many founders who struggle with like, I need everything to be perfect and I don't know what the first steps are to take before I take something public. And I find it really fascinating to kind of understand from a founder's perspective, like what were the first few things that you did once you recognized you wanted to build this? And the founders that we've had on the podcast so far kind of lean more creative sometimes, so they were focused on like brand and the vision versus I think like naturally you're a builder, so I imagine you really focused on the product itself. But if there were like the first three things that you did, like how did you approach even just starting the company once you knew you had the idea?
Yeah, definitely for Friday, it was just building, like building and shipping and talking to customers. For Delphi, we launched within a month of getting funded, which was like extremely early. We didn't put any attention into brand. We soon learned that the type of business that we're building, brand is incredibly important, especially when you're promising to represent people in the digital world. I think one thing we did right early on is, most startup advice is like find a niche and double down on that niche. I actually think the better advice is to first cast a wide net and start large so that you can find the right niche that takes you to the global maximum rather than a niche that seems promising early on, but it actually doesn't lead to a huge company. So we started pretty broadly early on. We were just kind of experimenting, like what can you actually do with cloning? And that gave us a lot of insight to where we are now.
And then kind of diving also into the fundraising round that you recently closed, you've had incredible founders and investors involved in the round, from Founders Fund, Lux Capital, and so many others. I guess from the fundraising experience and having exited a company in the past before, how did you approach fundraising? Because I think, again, a lot of founders that we speak to don't really know how to start. They may not have warm intros. They take the cold, outbound approach. Like, how did you approach who you wanted to partner with and who you wanted to invest in the company and take it forward when you were going through the fundraising process?
To be honest, I really had no idea what I was doing
Okay.
when I first started. I didn't even know that my first pitch was actually a pitch. I was like put on a call with Susa and I thought it was just like a nice conversation. Then I realized like, holy shit, this is a pitch. I'm not prepared for this. So I would say you definitely need to prepare and schedule it out. It's a full-time job. I was pitching while I was working at Open Store, which was not a good idea because you really need to think deeply about the way you're telling the story. And I think you want to find the VCs or the people who are like going to collaborate with you, not people who are just going to instruct you or, tell you to do things. You want people who are going to dive deep into ideas with you and who are truly founders first. I think it's very obvious when you're pitching the questions that VCs ask, whether they're the collaborative type or the over-instructive type. And you always want to opt for the collaborative type.
Totally. And I guess kind of backtracking, when it came to what you did with Friday, I am also so curious what the exit process looked like or what those conversations looked like, because I know there are so many talented builders who think of platforms like MicroAcquire that have like democratized the ability to get someone to acquire what you've built. And I guess I'm really curious, was it like serendipitous for you, or did you go out with the idea of wanting to exit that? Like, how did you approach that part of your founder journey?
Yeah, so with Friday, I was a solo founder and I didn't care too deeply about the problem space. And those were definitely the two biggest learnings that I was bringing to Delphi. Like, I need a co-founder and I need to care about what I'm working on. And so I told myself, hey, I'm going to work on this for like 6 to 8 months and see where I'm at. We'll think about where things are. 6 months in, I was kind of finding product market fit in the parent area. So parents were using Delphi to buy things that they didn't really want to think about, like batteries, staplers, diapers, paper towels, kind of like GoPuff type of things, but they just wanted to text for it. And a couple of companies had reached out to me on Twitter about an acquisition, and one of them was a pretty good acquisition, but they said that I would have to work for them. So it was an acqui-hire. And so I was like, what if I could just put Friday on MicroAcquire for the same price without the acqui-hire? And that worked beautifully.
Awesome. Okay, that's such good advice, because I think a lot of founders struggle with not knowing like how to approach it and how involved they'll be. And I guess now steering the conversation to like AI at large, naturally there's so many just different topics and topics of conversation that I think straddle the line between like the business ramifications, but also like philosophical and like morality and humans and like what that all means. And I think the reason I'm really like inspired and obsessed with what you're building is because you have somehow managed to find this like really great in between where you are solving the problem of like wanting to get information from people who are not here anymore, or even just like people that you might not have access to that can now provide information and support you and mentor you, and at the same time also like presenting it in a way where you're not replacing people, but you're just allowing them to create another version of themselves to help more people. And so I guess like this is leaning more into the like philosophical brand community of what you're building, but how did you come to figure out how to exactly like kind of, I guess, like make sure that you are doing something that's helpful to society, but then also not, I guess, leaning too far into the conversation of like AI replacing people and kind of all the fear mongering that's happening?
Yeah, definitely. So from the beginning, my co-founder and I wanted to be very particular about this company is not about AI. Like we almost tried to not use AI anywhere in our marketing materials
Wow.
because we want to make it about the problem. Access to expertise, access to people, and then scarcity of time for the people who are really busy. I think AI, like a lot of people can be obsessed about the technology. And AI is a tool that allows us to solve this problem that so many people have had for years and years. So that's one thing we really try to emphasize as we think about the problem. This is kind of cliche as like a tech bro, but Zero to One, great book. If you actually read the chapter on AI in that book, I think it's one of the only things that Peter Thiel wasn't 100% right about. But there is a point where he's like, AI is best when it's augmenting people, not automating. And that's what we believe as well. We're not in the business of automating people. We want to help people make themselves more available, monetize their knowledge, increase engagement, understand their audience, do more with less. And what we found is we're solving a two-sided problem. We're solving a problem for consumers and creators. And so we have to be aware of both of those customers.
That's such a good point that you make in terms of like the augmentation. And I guess this is like more from my own curiosity. I studied like art history in undergrad as well as like finance, but I love art history way more. And so the idea of like studying a painting from 400 years ago and analyzing like a brush stroke and like everything that it could mean, but now like going on a platform like Delphi and potentially like talking to Monet and understanding how he thought about his brush strokes rather than just projecting. Like, I think the way that this will expand the way that we think or even just can apply like our own observations is what really excites me. I think more so, I don't know why I see the impact of this so much more on like the creative side of what I'm enthusiastic about, but it does also excite me thinking about like history and just like there are so many people who study like stoicism and being able to go like, I don't know, find a mentor on Delphi that actually can give you advice from an analysis of all the like ancient Greek texts that stoicism comes from. Like that just, I don't know, I'm just so obsessed with what you're building from, I guess, the like creative, philosophical, like artistic side of things, and it's just amazing. And so in terms of now like closing the fundraise and what the next chapter of Delphi looks like, how are you approaching like acquiring users and building community, I guess? Because community has really felt like a buzzword. Of course, like our podcast really talks about community as well and the importance of it, but we also like to ask people how they define community because it can have so many different definitions as well.
Yeah, so I always think that when looking for a community or network, definitely build it before you need it. So one of these programs, On Deck, that I was a part of, super helpful in building a network in tech. And I would always just like reach out to people to just have meetings with no agenda. Because I think it's very obvious when like you're trying to reach out to someone and you have some agenda. So I think it's always great to just authentically reach out to people, be curious, get to know them. And in terms of finding customers for Delphi, one of the values that OpenStore had that we carry on to this company is inputs over outputs. What that means is if you focus on the core principles of building a good company, good design, good brand, care for the customer, doing things with integrity, things will pay off in the long term. So Sam and I were building Delphi for the last 6 months, getting very little attention. We were just really focused on, okay, how can we build a brand? How can we learn about the customer? Now that is starting to pay off, and we're starting to see like people who would have never answered my DMs to clone are now interested in cloning themselves. And so I think that we want to stay by that mentality, not being too obsessed with the outcome, but rather just like on the inputs of what makes a good company.
Yeah, and I guess kind of touching on the fact that there have been so many incredible communities like On Deck that have, I guess, like put founders and builders together to really like bolster and support one another. I am really curious, like when it comes to having a community, or let's say just like with the rise of like AI and people being really enthusiastic about it, how has it been just to, I guess, be part of communities of other builders who are thinking about like the potential use cases of AI and taking it forward? And like, what has it been like to be part of that community, and how has it been to just like meet with other founders who are also thinking about all the different possibilities that are out there?
I think it was definitely valuable before Delphi, like realizing, okay, it's okay to like put yourself out there on Twitter and post things and like this is how you raise money. But now I actually think it's not good to be too reliant on founder communities, and I'll tell you why. The bar to building a company is so low right now. Anyone can build a company. You're only really going to be able to create something great with like a unique insight and a unique way of doing things. And if you are talking to too many people, your way of doing things is going to revert towards the mean. And if you want to be successful, you have to be an outlier. So I try to actually limit the number of people I talk to about Delphi to make sure that the advice I'm getting is like congruent with my vision and coming from people who I actually like look up to.
That's super, I think that's a really refreshing take, because I know a lot of founders who get overwhelmed with all the events that happen and feeling like they have to go to all the tech weeks about the potentiality of meeting someone.
That is not doing any of that, at least like before you started the company. I think that's great to do in anticipation. Once you're in the company, like you should not be going to, I think we're going to have a company value soon that no one's allowed to go to San Francisco tech happy hour.
I feel like that's a great value. It also like helps with like work-life balance and everything, since all of those events tend to happen after work. But no, thank you so much. I think this has been like really comprehensive and great advice in terms of everything that you've done so far. The last question that we always love to end with is, if you do have one word to describe being a founder, like what would that one word be?
That's a tough one. I would say testing. Like testing. Every new phase is like a new test. And I like to look at life as like a game, and there's all these different games, and being a founder is like a really hard game. And there's all these different roadblocks and obstacles you have to overcome, and you get better and better, but you're constantly being challenged. So definitely testing.
I love that. That's actually, we've never had someone say that, and I actually love it, because I feel like we've had a lot of people say like resiliency, which is obviously I think a huge part of being a founder, but testing is like, I guess, everything. When you think about being a founder, that's kind of at the core of everything that you do. Yeah,
I mean, resilience, you need resilience to get through tests, you know, like the hero's journey.
Yeah, for sure. Well, those are all of my questions, so thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.